Hello, and welcome to On Watch by MarketWatch. I'm Jeremy Owens. Happy New Year! We wanted to kick off 2025 the way we feel all our readers and listeners should, with a bit of financial planning. At the beginning of every year, my wife and I talk about budgeting. We plan vacations for the year and other financial outlays. Fortunately for me, I have an expert at the other end of the line whenever I need. So I wanted to share that expert with you. His name is Quentin Fottrell, and he's known as the Moneyist. For a lot of you, that name needs no introduction. But if you're new here, Quentin answers questions from MarketWatch readers about their financial issues. And he also leads a team of columnists who answer your questions about taxes, real estate, retirement, and more. So today, we sit down with Quentin to talk through tips to prepare financially for 2025, and we'll hear from some other MarketWatch staffers about how to maximize your financial life in the new year. Now, I had some serious questions for the Moneyist, and so did some of you. We asked some of our hardcore Moneyist fans on Facebook what they wanted to know, and the number one topic by a wide margin was healthcare. Americans' anger about the current health insurance system has been in the news lately, with a lot of it focused on costs and denials of service. But there's also the threat the current system faces from the incoming administration. We started there. Well, Quentin, President-elect Donald Trump has been vocal about his intention to weaken the ACA. Some people call it Obamacare. How should they be preparing?
Yeah, ACA is a real hot potato. President-elect Trump has made conflicting statements about the future of Obamacare. KFF, formerly the Kaiser Family Foundation, has basically laid it out, saying that the enhanced ACA subsidies passed under the Biden administration, which have cut premium payments nearly in half for millions and helped to increase enrollment, are set to expire at the end of 2025. So without Congress extending those, your premiums are going to go up and people are going to pull out of Obamacare. Trump has said he had a choice to let it rot. He did not make that choice when he was president in his first term, but there are other ways that the new administration could present challenges. The Congressional Budget Office has said that the estimated cost to permanently extend these enhanced subsidies would be $335 billion over 10 years, and that the ACA marketplace enrollment would fall from around 22.8 million in 2025 to 15.4 million in 2030. So that shows you the kind of uncertainty that hangs over Obamacare.
Well, Quentin, I also want to talk about health savings accounts. When we talked to the MarketWatch staff about what they were doing different this year, HSAs came up. Now, these have only been around for 20 years, but they're a great vehicle to save for potential healthcare expenses or even retirement, and they're highly tax advantaged. I want to focus on the healthcare purpose here. What should people be thinking about if they're trying to put some money into a health savings account this year?
So I absolutely think that that's a great idea. For Medicare, for example, the standard monthly Part B premium is going to rise to $185 in 2025. And that's up from just over $174 this year. Part B covers things like doctor visits, outpatient hospital services, medical equipment. So you see the challenges for people who are facing retirement. So the more you can do privately yourself, the better.
And the other thing people are talking about a lot with Trump coming in is tariffs. What things should people be looking out for there?
Absolutely. I think Trump has said he might impose tariffs of up to 60% on some imports, which could also increase inflation and lift treasury yields. And that also, Jeremy, could lead to more stock market volatility as a result. And in addition, with inflation and higher interest rates, don't expect mortgage rates to necessarily continue their downward trajectory in 2025. That's not actually a given. So there's a lot of things that are uncertain with the incoming administration. So keep that in mind. Obviously, if you're going to buy certain products, you might want to start before any of these tariffs come into play. But there are some upsides. Trump has campaigned on extending the wide sweeping tax cuts that he introduced during his first term. So it gives you more reason, in theory, to max out those contributions in 2025, whether it's a 401k, an IRA, 529 plan, whatever it is your tax advantage vehicle is. I would also say that I know the incoming administration has signaled its preference for industrial policies that could provide more stimulus to the US economy. So those policies could, in theory, lead to a stronger dollar, which some analysts say would benefit US small cap firms focused on the domestic market. So, there are swings and roundabouts to this next administration. In order to sort of hedge your bets, some analysts say real estate investment trusts are even more attractive than bonds due to the higher relative yields. And they note that they provide both diversification and liquidity, which means that obviously you can access your cash more easily if you need it. Something to think about for 2025.
Well, you mentioned interest rates. We do right now expect interest rates to continue to come down some. The Fed says twice next year they'll cut. What should we be thinking about with lower interest rates? How does that affect our money? How should we move our money or change our approach in response to the thought that interest rates will continue to decline?
Well, first of all, the biggest purchase you're going to make in your lifetime will probably be your home. So if you're sitting on a 7% plus mortgage rate and interest rates do come down significantly over the next 12, 24 months, it might be a time to look at changing that rate, right? And having a talk with your bank. If you are selling a home and you're sitting on a 2.5% interest rates are lower and you're maybe wanting to downsize, you may have more incentive to do that. Even if you're swapping for a slightly higher rate, may be worth doing if you're buying a smaller property.
Yeah, and speaking of housing, we actually had a question for you from a MarketWatch staffer. She wanted to know when the right time is to buy a second home. She owns a co-op she lives in with her husband and kids, but would like to put money toward what she calls a fantasy, a second home within driving distance of New York City. Is there a certain milestone she should consider when making that purchase? And I wanted to bring this up because it speaks to a much broader financial question, Quentin. What should people be thinking about in taking a financial risk this year?
So the right time to buy a second home is A, when you can afford it. B, when you and your husband agree and are comfortable with the expenses, because I'm sure there'll be debate over that. And C, when you still have things like an emergency fund of at least 6 months after you buy the home, and you're still able to put additional money into your retirement funds. Like, you don't want to rob from your future to pay for a second home when you already have a roof over your head, because as we all know, you can't borrow on your retirement. But it all depends on your financial circumstances, because we really, we don't know what big, unexpected geopolitical or economic event is around the corner, right? They tend to come around every few years and take us by surprise. So you want to give yourself enough of a buffer that you can withstand those shocks if and when they arrive.
There's one thing that stuck out to me about what Quentin said there at the end. You should strive to give yourself a financial buffer to be ready to withstand shocks. And look, I can't predict what kind of shocks are coming in the next year. But instead of focusing on being reactive financially, there are things you can do to try to make the most of your personal financial situation. So after the break, we'll dive into some tips from MarketWatch staff members that can help with that. Stay with us. Welcome back. As we prepare for the new year, we wanted to give you a few tips on how to maximize your savings. So we went around the newsroom and asked our MarketWatch colleagues for tips on financially preparing for 2025. We got a lot of great info, and today I'm going to share 3 big ones with you. We've got some tips for high earners and average wage earners alike, but I wanted to start with one that really blew my mind for people who are high income. You can save up to $70,000 a year for your retirement. Yeah, you heard that right, 70 grand. Here's personal finance reporter Vanessa Wong to tell you how.
Ask your employer about a mega backdoor Roth. It's a Roth 401k strategy in which you are able to put up to $70,000 into your 401k in the calendar year 2025. It's a way for you to supercharge your retirement if you're able to. One of the common avenues is to set aside extra money in an IRA. However, if you make too much money, you are not able to put away any extra retirement savings into an IRA. So the IRS sets that limit at $165,000 for single filers and $246,000 for joint filers. So if you earn more than this income level, the way to set aside extra money for retirement is to ask your plan sponsor, like say Fidelity, Vanguard, whoever handles your 401k plan, if they offer a mega backdoor Roth option. And so what you'll do is you'll max out your 401k savings for 2025, so that's $23,500, and then you'll tell them, on top of that, I'd like to make some after-tax contributions. This is not a new strategy. It's been around for some years, but it is becoming more common. Financial planners told me that not only are more 401k plans offering this, people are more aware of this, and they're asking them about the possibility of investing into their 401ks in this way.
Now for tip number 2, if you're saving outside an employer plan, like a traditional Roth IRA, you're going to want to think about if and how that money is invested. Here's what MarketWatch financial planning columnist Beth Pinsker had to say.
You want to make sure to make an IRA or a Roth contribution and invest it. That's a step that most people forget to do. About 40% of people just make the contribution and never tell it where to go. This is a 2-step process. You deposit the money and then you invest it in some kind of investment, whether it's a mutual fund or an ETF, just something that will grow into the future with you. You don't have to be complicated about this or fancy. Just put it in a very plain vanilla index fund, but you want to do something with it that's better than cash. You don't need to be a near retiree to do any of this. A 16-year-old can do it, which is what my kids do. You take your summer earnings, you put them in the Roth IRA, and they grow until you're 60 and ready to retire, and you've got a lot of money saved without even thinking much about it.
Now remember, you're able to add funds to your traditional or Roth IRA for the year 2024 until tax day, April 15th, 2025. This could be helpful if you didn't get the chance to invest as much as you wanted by the end of the year, or if you didn't get to invest at all, you still can. And as the Moneyist says,
the biggest key for saving for retirement is to start the day before tomorrow, that is today.
So yes, you should put more in if you can, but the key is to start. That's the power of compound interest. And for our last tip, I want to zoom out from retirement and take a look at your investments in general, whether they're in a health savings account, a taxable brokerage account, or a robo-advisor. Gordon Gott-Sagan, our retail investment reporter at MarketWatch, had this tip for the new year.
As we enter this new year, I think it's a good chance to take a look at what you're invested in and how your finances are managed, particularly in your brokerage accounts in regards to what fees you're paying. Fees can pop up a few ways. They can be subscription charges in order to get premium features on your investing apps, but they can also be fees that you pay through things like ETFs, mutual funds, or your financial advisor. Not too many younger investors use mutual funds or financial advisors, but if you do, you're paying a percentage of the money in those funds or that are managed. As you get more money, as your wealth accumulates through your investing, that percentage starts to add up. So every year, I think it's a good chance to just take a look at what you're invested in and what you're paying for, and then ask yourself, am I getting my money's worth, or do I want to find some sort of discount I can get to pay less on these investing services?
Now, in terms of fees, you'll want to stay under 1% if possible. Fees between 1 and 2% are generally regarded as high. And as Gordon said, the more money you have invested, the bigger that check is going to be. As for my advice, It's kind of similar. Go through all the things you're paying for right now, especially streaming services and things that are just $5 to $10 to $15 a month. A lot of those we can forget we're even paying, but they are taking money from you. And the beginning of the year is a great time to sit down and catalog all the things you're paying subscriptions for and see what you can get rid of. We've had some great advice today, but we want to hear from you, our listeners. If you have any questions for the Moneyist or MarketWatch's other advice experts who focus on real estate, taxes, retirement, and many other things, we'd love to hear them. You can leave us a comment on Spotify or reach out to us by email at onwatch@marketwatch.com with your written questions or a voice note. We'd love to hear your voice on the show. And that's it for this episode. To keep following the latest financial news, head to MarketWatch.com. Have questions about the news and the economy? We want to hear them. You can reach us at onwatch@MarketWatch.com. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, and please do. If you like what you heard, please leave us a rating or review. It really helps others discover the show. The show is hosted by me, Jeremy Owens, and produced by Alexis Moore. Isaac Gaines mixed this episode. Melissa Haggerty is the executive producer. We'll be back next week with a new episode, and until then, we'll be watching.